I think I have the most exciting district and seat up here just because it is an open seat. So with that, I'd love to hear from you guys if you don't mind introducing yourselves and talking a little bit about what all is going on in your world and anything you want to add about affordability. We'll share.
Right. Thank you very much. My name is Rich DePalma, and I'm a candidate for Southwest Austin City Council District 8. A longtime resident, actually lived in the district longer than all the candidates combined, which sadly is not that long because it's only just short of 12 years. But given that time, I've served as Vice President of Oak Hill Association Neighborhoods, Vice Chair of the Parks and Recreation Board for the last 3 years. Served on the AISD Facilities and Bond Planning Advisory Committee. I was the school board president's appointment to that and served the whole district at large. Been active within the community for over a decade, from my original beginning in Southwest Austin of co-founding Friends of Dick Nichols Park in 2007. Helped make sure we advocated for relieving our overcrowded schools over at Kiker and over at Clayton. And been focused on a lot of the issues within the district. My big concern on affordability across the board is not having the diverse housing stock that we need to be actually meet our needs as a community. I see this specifically in District 8 with our seniors. We have seniors who are wanting to actually find senior housing and go ahead and leave their traditional single family homes to find affordable housing.
Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Paige Ellis, and I'm running for Austin City Council in District 8. I am a public involvement and marketing specialist for an environmental consulting firm. We work on transportation and housing projects. So I have seen on the ground level that we can manage our watershed protection while encouraging density in the appropriate places. We just have to be smart about it. I learned the values of hard work from my parents. My mom's a retired public school teacher, and my dad worked the night shift at the local hospital. So I have learned the values of hard work from them and look forward to representing my community moving forward. I've been a donor to the Barton Springs Conservancy, to the Zilker Botanical Garden, and to the Trail Foundation, and have done volunteer organizing for Keep Austin Beautiful and the Texas Book Festival. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Bobby Levinsky. I'm also running for Austin City Council District 8 here in Southwest Austin. I live over in Maple Run, which is just across the street of Brody. I moved to Austin back in 2004, and I started working at City Hall back in 2005. I have worked for 3 different city council members. I started with council member Jennifer Kim, and that's when we initiated the Austin Affordable Housing Incentives Task Force. Sorry, it was a long acronym. And that's where we adopted the city's core values of deeper affordability. Oh my goodness, that's not a lot of time. Deep affordability, geographic dispersion, and lower levels of affordability. I've also worked for Councilmember Jennifer Kim, Councilmember Laura Morrison, and Mayor Pro Tem Kathy Tovo. Sorry, I'm getting a little bit flustered with the time, but we're going to talk here about affordable housing quite a bit, but I'm very committed to getting in control of our planning and focusing on density bonus programs so we can generate the affordable housing resources that we need. Thank you.
And there is one more candidate running in this district. I reached out to him as best I could a couple of times, I think 3 times, and we didn't hear back. So thank you all for being here. Let's start off right here, Rich, and we'll go to your left. When considering affordable housing to be supported by the city, whether financial or other support, what are the top 2 or 3 criteria you would use to rank a project to deem it worthy of support?
One is meeting the community need for that particular area, and the second one is what the ROI is as far as how much actually affordability that you're getting from that funding that you're putting forward. I got to say, we have some great folks, nonprofit partners here right now, but I've looked at the past grant funding that's gone through from the previous bond on affordable housing, and I've been disappointed by some of the folks who actually received some of the grant monies. And it's really when you have a situation like first in, first out on grant funding, with the exception of when not having a competitive process, then you don't get the best value. And if we don't get the best value for affordable housing, who's hurting is our community who's at greatest need. And then, yeah, so that's really it. And so for me, when we're looking at layering the information from the strategic housing blueprint, as well as our Austin age-friendly plan, are we meeting the need? We already invested the money as far as what that plan looks like. And so if we're saying this is where we're going to go ahead and prioritize funding for affordable housing, are we checking that box and saying, yes, this is how we're doing it, we're leveraging those dollars efficiently?
One of the things that I would look at first is how connected it is to either existing transit or planned transit as we look at some of the plans that we are putting through. The other areas I would look at is what is spelled out in the Imagine Austin growth concept map. I happen to live in one of these apartments that has just recently been built in the district. I moved there from another place that I lived since 2011. I experienced with that project, they had a lot of issues with building permitting and getting their inspections handled. So that is an area where we can definitely help people out as they are trying to follow these plans and trying to make sure they're connected to transit and the other services that are needed in our community to make sure that we actually are getting things permitted and inspected in a timely fashion so that the city is not holding up that process.
I personally put a particular emphasis on the nonprofit providers because there are opportunities for nonprofit providers that we need to create, especially with community land trust and buying land or using our city-owned assets to build out housing. There was a development just to the east of here called Little Texas, where a private developer got a sweetheart deal by using the city helped purchase the land. And they did very little affordability, and it was a massive, to me, a boondoggle, because our nonprofit housing providers aren't provided those same opportunities, and the taxes that are that they have to pay are more than what that private developer was going to have to do. That's not to say that we can't leverage our assets with private corporations that can help build us housing, but it has to be done in a smart way that is a good return on our investment. I also agree with the comments on location. I think that access to jobs and transit is really important where we're putting our affordable housing, but it can't just be the only determining factor. There are different communities that we have a lot of needs in, and we just got to make sure that the deal makes sense for where it's going to be located. There was a location off of 620 that may not have had a great access to transit, but it was an area where there's a desperate need for that type of low-income housing, and it was something that I was proud to support. So thank you.
Great, thanks. So this question will go to Paige, and then we'll keep going in the same direction. We'll go to your left afterwards. Exclusionary zoning or overly restrictive zoning was recently called out by HUD as being an unnecessary hurdle for housing, similar to the last administration's White House Housing Toolkit. If elected, what would you do to remove barriers to missing middle housing and increase the efficiency of the development we see put on the ground?
That's a great question. I think it's obvious to everyone that we need to move forward with revising our 1984 Land Development Code. I know that Code Next is now off the table, but everybody is in agreement that we can still make adjustments to the current code and to continue to use Imagine Austin as our plan moving forward. I don't know anyone that disagrees with the idea of density along transit corridors. I think that's something that we've utilized in the past. It's functioning well, we just need to beef it up. But we also need to look at transition zoning and missing middle housing and utilizing duplexes and quadplexes in ways that can still enhance neighborhood character while allowing us to increase the supply of housing that is so desperately needed, in addition to some of the other things that we can do to make sure that housing stock doesn't fall off the market for being out of code and things like that. So that's the place I would first look to make sure that our zoning is appropriate.
For me, I'd say that first I want to recognize that I live in a duplex, and it's something that I acknowledge that I would not be able to afford to where I'm living right now if it weren't for that type of housing existing. That said, I also think that we need to be focused on making sure it complies with our growth concept map. There are areas that we are trying to incentivize growth and incentivize redevelopment, and that's where that direction needs to be headed. With regard to some certain areas, especially in the Eastern Crescent part of our town, I do get a little bit concerned that it creates an incentive for displacement if we're adding more incentives onto those properties. So I think there's ways that we can do it where we might add that extra unit without creating that extra incentive on tearing down that original structure. So if there's ways that we can do maybe ready-to-build plans for ADUs in certain areas where we can add that additional housing without creating a system that kicks out people that can't afford to stay there with the rising property values that we have. So,
Got to limit the amount of SF1 housing that we have, and particularly on our zoning. Sorry, you keep hitting me over here. It's linked up a little bit, so I'm going to scoot next to Greg over here, and it's because we're close friends. So when the reality is we're so limited that we have to focus at our PUDs here in Southwest Austin to be able to have the diversity of housing that we want. So when you look at Circle C, we're surrounded by SF1 housing, and you look at Circle C and we have that diversity, but we can't do that diversity right now outside of a PUD, and that's what's ridiculous. And so if we want to be able to have those duplexes and quadplexes and that multifamily housing on the transit corridors, and if you're looking at infill or what you can do within other planned unit developments, particularly what I'm thinking over the Yates Ranch off of 71, here's an opportunity. Instead of developing 380 one-acre lots, let's go ahead and develop, say, 500 plus senior retirement center. Smaller footprints, we're protecting the water and wildlife conservation area, and actually making more meaningful impact relating to affordability. So those are the things that I'd like to see. I think that are absolutely important. But it's just not that. And so it's that diversity of housing stock across the board, so we can have the exact same thing you see in Circle C or in Hyde Park and other parts of the city. Have to be able to address the land development code in order to do that. Of course, looking at our parking, and that makes how we can go ahead and have more inclusionary zoning. And so if you're saying we're going to have senior development centers, looking at vertical mixed use, I'd love to see that around 71 specifically in 290, where we have a large population of our seniors right now, and this is actually my biggest concern. When we look at the district, what our district needs, and you see this across the city, but you're looking at your map, we have an abundance of seniors who are really concerned about what they're going to do. Here's an opportunity to do that, but we can't do it without the change of zoning and vertical mixed use and some other solutions that we currently don't have the availability to do.
Great, thanks. So this time we'll start with Bobby and then come over to you, Rich. Do you support Prop A? And if so, what have you done to show your support, and what do you plan to do between now and November 6th to continue showing your support?
So I have supported Prop A. I supported the previous housing bonds too. I was part of helping put together that emergency housing bond that we needed to pass after the first one didn't fail. I've attended many meetings for Prop A. I've spoken in favor of it. I've answered every questionnaire in favor of it. We're talking about it a lot, so I think I don't know if there's much more we can do with the amount of time that we have, but if there's anything that you have, any suggestions on that we could do more, please feel free to call me.
Yeah, great. So, yeah, absolutely for A. So there's the first thing. But no, we started off at the kickoff, and that was the big thing in promoting being at the kickoff. But the biggest thing we can do as candidates is having the conversations, because we're having a lot of these conversations within our neighborhoods, within small groups, and just at the front door. And it comes up, what do you think about the specific bonds? Or what do you talk when you're talking about what do you think about affordability? Affordability and transportation are two of the major issues in Southwest Austin, but across the entire city. When these conversations exist, it's important to actually put that framework around them. So last night was an example. I had a fundraiser in Southwest Austin, and the conversation quickly became the development next to Goritsky Middle School. And there was concern, oh gosh, are those going to be apartments? And I said, I hope so. The same thing when and part of this whole conversation in bringing up the townhomes, 25 townhomes developed on 8 acres with 25% impervious cover by ABI Homes on La Crosse and Mopac. Same sort of conversation. But when you frame it, these are the folks within our community, what the issues that we're having as a community in terms of seniors wanting to make sure that they can stay and age in place within the community, not necessarily in the home that their current single-family home is too much for them to handle. 75 years old, if you have a large backyard, large front yard, you want to stay in your community, and right now you're being forced out. If 53% of marriages across the United States end in divorce, and Southwest Austin is no different. And so if you end up in a divorce in my neighborhood, chances are you are out of Southwest Austin. So when I talked about this is the opportunity for that single parent with the kids to actually be able to stay in the neighborhood so the kids can have that continuity and the mom or the dad can continue that support network. That's why it's important. And when you frame that they understand it, and it turns the page what the values of affordable housing is for us in Southwest Austin and across the city.
I have come out in support of Prop A. I think a lot of the community is in alignment that this is a good thing, and it is the best way to solve the issues that we're having here in Austin. This is the #1 concern that I am hearing. I've been out door knocking in my district, and I've been surprised at how warm people have been, that they say even though they're doing okay, they are concerned about other people in our community that may not be doing okay. And I've been very impressed with how that's being perceived in District 8. I think it's important to come out for Prop A, and I also think that it's good to help educate people on what all is included in it. So I've had conversations with people about making sure that housing stock stays on the market and that there is help and funding available if buildings are falling out of code compliance, that there is assistance there to make sure that we aren't losing housing stock, and to also look at land acquisition portion of it as well, and really kind of look at that growth concept map that we keep talking about and making sure that we are continuing to move forward in a positive way.
I like your answers. So this time I'm going to start right here. We're going to go to the left. By the time Bobby is answering this question, if any of you have a question, I'd love for you to come up here and kind of be teed up to answer or ask the next question. So starting right here, imagine Austin calls for a rewrite of our land development code. As our current land development code was mostly written in the 1980s, what will you do to help us get a complete code rewrite in the land development code that helps us build more responsibly and more efficiently?
So it's a combination of different things, and we've heard from the earlier speakers. We know that's coming back from the city manager in January to February as far as a plan, and how do we move forward with our land development code. I was disappointed that we completely just put the kibosh on the current land development code. I think if anything, we should have just extended it to a draft 4. A lot of people had fear in the last code, and that's for various reasons, but we can't leave all that great work just sitting there. And so bringing that work forward and making sure that we're looking at that diversity of housing is really important. When we're talking about the parking requirements are really important. The green water infrastructure with the beneficial use is something that I worked on back when we first started the Green Water Working Group, serving on the Parks Board side. And so this is stuff that we need to make sure we bring forward. And then we have the conversations with the transect zones. And so moving forward, it's probably going to be talking about each of the various sections underneath the new land development code rewrite, getting through those specific ones and then addressing the maps as a community on a regional basis in order to get to the housing that we need. So it reflects Imagine Austin, and it reflects the age-friendly Austin plan, and that it reflects our watershed plan. These are all the things that are going to be really important in making sure that we are able to activate those transit corridors that we desperately need. We know in Southwest Austin specifically we have a need for transit, but yet we don't see it we don't see the options, and we don't see the options because we don't have enough butts and seats to actually make it sustainable in order to have public transportation. So those are the elements that I'm looking for, and I'll be working with the community. We need to be able to address all the fears out there. Some of it I think I have concern, I understand why. Working on the school AISD facilities and bond planning advisory committee specifically, every time there was a new draft of the facilities master plan, communities became fearful. And we said, these are just data points. It's going to help inform everything. Unfortunately, we didn't get to see what the sausage tasted like in this last iteration of land development code. We thought it just smelled bad and we threw it out. So we got to figure out what actually works in those ingredients to bring forward. Thank you.
Yeah, I think one of the first things that we need to look at with the new land development code is encouraging density where it's appropriate. There are a lot of places in town that are environmentally sensitive. So what I have seen in my day-to-day life, still working full-time while doing all of this, so if you want to chat about that, come find me. We need density where it's appropriate. It is environmentally responsible to stack it up where it makes sense to. We need more missing middle housing in those transition corridors. Those are the first places that need to be looked at. And then I think we also need to reevaluate our permitting process. I have heard so many complaints about how things are ready to go and they make sense and they're in the right locations and they just can't actually get approval to get it going. So in addition to looking at what that code looks like and what the map looks like, I think we need to talk about how permits are handled here in the city and make sure that we can move forward in a way that is very productive.
So Codenext as a product was about 1,500 pages at first, and then it ballooned past then the second draft and then the third draft, including some errata at the end that was about 400 pages. It was very difficult to follow, and I was somebody who was actually paid to follow it as part of my involvement with the Sabre Springs Alliance. With regard to the actual product, there were things in it that I supported, things that I did not support, but there was a lot more in between that we needed to have more difficult conversations on. And I really feel like we lacked a little bit of leadership on the city council level in helping guide those conversations. That's something that I did when I was a policy advisor for the different city council members. I helped facilitate negotiations and compromises in some very unlikely scenarios where we didn't think that we would be able to reach that consensus. We need to have that leadership on council so that we can be moving forward with revisions to the land development code. And I think it would be wise for us to break it up and not have a 1,500 page at once conversation. We need to be proceeding with amendments on a section by section basis so we can start making some progress. The green stormwater infrastructure amendments were brought up. That's something that I think we could achieve some consensus on, and maybe it'd be a nice little early first step so all the community can get involved and get together and start working a little bit better together. The rhetoric got entirely inflamed, and part of it I think was that first draft of Codenext that was released. It was entirely just unrecognizable with regard to the growth concept map. It did not compare to where we were intending to redevelop along the corridors and within the town centers. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to looking at it through the lens of Imagine Austin, and we need to restore the trust between communities.
I see Mr. Moreau coming up with a question, but real quick, so it came up in the last two discussions. A one-word answer, yay or nay for Prop J, starting here.
Nay.
Nay.
Loosely yay, but I would like to actually talk about that rather than just say yay or nay. I mean, it's a little bit more complicated than that.
You'll get it.
You might have to click the unmute.
I'm really curious, if you're elected and say a week after Amazon announces they're coming here, what's your reaction? What are you going to do? What are we going to do?
Do you mind? Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one. My main concern is how we handle property taxes for large corporations. That's the first question I'm hearing as I'm door knocking, shortly followed by the traffic that's going to be caused by it. So I'm in support of anything that builds and grows our community, but it has to alleviate our affordability and help with our traffic issues. So we really, really, really need to be tight on what we allow to happen in the city in that regard.
So week one, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to move forward with some of the water forward recommendations. That is something that is incredibly important for our community to make sure we have water so we can continue to grow and have water to serve those future populations. We got into some pretty dangerous levels not too long ago with the worst drought on record. And unless we're taking water seriously in this community, we're not going to have affordable water in years to come. That's something that we need some code revisions on, and that's we're going to have to start that conversation now.
So I want to see the plan on transportation, housing, environment, and education, and see how we can leverage them all together. So if we're going to look at specific investments or where they're going to be buying land, where do we have the opportunity to leverage that investment? If we know that we can leverage additional lines of transportation because of that, I want to do that. We have under-enrolled schools in the eastern part of our community. If we can go ahead and look as far as we have 2, 3-bedroom or multi-family or single-family homes, hopefully they have a smaller footprint, then what we can end up doing is repopulate a lot of those elementary schools that are under-enrolled. I think that's an important part of it. So some of the things that I've done when I served on the ASD Facilities and Bond Planning Advisory Committee, when I brought the school district in to meet with Planning Department, when I brought them in to meet with Watershed, and when I brought them in to go meet with Texas Facilities Commission, how can we leverage those investments to actually improve our situation versus not have that smart planning that's involved. So it really talks about that collaboration. But on the environmental side, absolutely, when we're looking at LEED certified at the highest level on all these particular facilities, where we can have on-site water reclamation and recapture and reuse, I think that's going to be really important, particularly if we look at stormwater and that major investment. So there's a lot to be discussed with them, and I'm going to want to have those conversations and be really convinced that we have a plan that leverages that investment for the benefit of our entire community.
I think we have another question. Great. And this will go down to Bobby.
The mayor had mentioned when he was here earlier that he's initiating a review or a recalibration of our density bonus programs. Could you speak to what you think about the current state of our density bonus programs is, like DMU or TOD or PUD?
Yeah, we continually give away entitlements for free in the city. The density bonus programs are calibrated way too low. I remember back in, I don't know, it was probably 2008, 2009, we initiated a raise of an increase in the density bonus fee for West Campus from 50 cents to hopefully to get to $1. It took us 5 years to have that study done, and then the change never actually happened because the ordinance was written wrong. So we need to calibrate our density bonus fee in a way that if they're not providing on-site units, it is covering the cost of building that other unit. That's how the fee should be set. It shouldn't just be set on a minimal percent basis that will never get us the resources that we need to start making a significant change in the gaps that we're experiencing.
So yeah, it's interesting because for me, I think about where we had it with our parkland dedication ordinance, that I helped bring the two different groups together, both the environmental side and the development side, in order to make something that worked. So I think this is a similar situation. Because you're right, if you are looking at do that calculation of your density bonus and it's on the percentage basis, then we're never going to be able to build the housing where we need it. And so when you're looking at what that actual unit cost is, and so when you have that calibration that the mayor had talked about earlier, that's the direction we need to go. We need to be able to find that sweet spot where it's hurting development just enough where they're pushing back a little bit, but in the meantime it doesn't stop actually investment into the density. Like people say, forget it, we're not going to willing to do it because it just doesn't pencil out. So it's finding that exact right balance through that calibration.
Yeah, I would say it needs to be increased. The incentives should be to get us where we want as a city. So it needs to look at our values as we look at increasing housing and increasing density where it's appropriate. That's exactly where you need to be making the changes to encourage the growth that we do need and do support.
Great, great. Love that question. It's a really good one. We have TODs that right now have height limits of 60 feet, developers that want to build a lot more with entitlements given. For this question, we can take one more question, but we're going to have to just give you guys 1 minute so we can give you some time to wrap up. Please go ahead.
Well, I'll bring it up. Prop J, I hear 2 no's, and I hear a maybe depends upon, but as somebody that believes kind of in property rights and also did a lot kind of looking at Code Nexus, what it was going to do, I think as a voter, I should have a say-so versus having to depend upon 11 people to make a determination. We spent $8 million on something that turned into a giant cluster, and I really think that we as voters should have a say-so in how it impacts us as property owners or whatever the case is on those type of things. So I'd like to know why your nays and go from there. Thank you.
I'll be right back.
Sure. Thank you for that, because I'd like to be able to explain the yay.
And if we could, let's keep this to 1 minute if we could.
That's fine. So I was part of defending Prop J at the court because when the council refused to do their ministerial duty to let the voters vote on it, I think that was something that was really important for us to at least make sure the state law was complied with. But also with regard to the actual petition, I mean, the reason why I would say loosely lay is it's not a perfect solution by any means, but it is a solution, and it was a result of a deep frustration that was experienced in our community. And I don't think the council should be afraid of a check on its work. So that's really what it was designed to do. And it is my deep personal hope that we never actually ever triggered the petition, and we proceed with code amendments as a step-by-step basis, so we're never doing a comprehensive revision, we're just revising the code comprehensively.
The reason I'm a nay, because I think it benefits a small group of stakeholders who actively follow and have a specific agenda, and the average individual is not going to take the time to become the land development expert on 15 to 1600 pages or 1700 pages of the land development code. I think that's why they end up electing their council person and actually keeping that council person accountable. And so for having the stakeholder engagement with the community, it should be reflected on whether that vote happens or not. So I do worry about how many things are we going to be bringing up as far as to the community and saying, okay, now we want your input on this, now input on that. And the influence that the voters have on very limited information for a small group of stakeholders. And so I think it's where you have staff and you have folks who have the policy background that actually makes that choice why you've elected them. And that's where I'm a nay.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Rich on this one. I think it's important that people have a say in their communities. I think that's why we elect the people who share our values to represent us on the dais. I do worry about the dangers of never changing our land development code. That's a very real concern, that we could be using a 1984 code forever if we continue this back and forth gridlock of not actually getting anything done. So I think that's where sometimes we need a fresh set of eyes and less insider politics to actually fix the things in our community that we want to fix.
Wonderful. Okay, let's take 2 minutes each. We'll start with Rich and then give Bobby the last word in 2 minutes, and then we'll wrap it up. Thanks.
Sounds good. Well, I appreciate being here. We do have a lot of need across the city, specifically in Southwest Austin, relating to affordable housing. Sometimes we just don't recognize it. In Southwest Austin, we have close to 5,000 folks who live underneath the poverty level. And unfortunately, they are surrounded and embraced and covered, quite frankly, regarding the affluency that is in the district. And so the goal is to make sure that their voices are heard, their needs are met, but then also to make sure that Southwest Austin is doing its part. Right now, we have less than 1% of the affordable housing units or deeply affordable housing units in Southwest Austin. That's a problem. We're not doing our fair share. And I think what's great about our community, it doesn't matter if you're a Republican, Democrat, or Independent, folks are actively want to be part of the solution. So I'm looking forward to help drive that and have those community conversations. So for a little about me, 17 years working with municipalities, state governments, universities, and community colleges across the district. Worked with New York City, City of Boston, Pittsburgh, EPA, and a whole bunch of other different entities. I've also worked with the private sector, making sure we have solutions that meet the public sector's needs and what the mission that they're trying to accomplish. So whether it's program evaluations or determining if there's a business case for a particular solution, I've worked on it. So I bring that to bear. Just having the community interests at heart. Having been there for over a decade, I bleed Southwest Austin. I know my community, and I want to bring the skill sets because of that filter, because of that knowledge of my community. So my community has honored me as the 2016 Oak Hill Citizen of the Year. 2017, I was the Barton Creek State Barton Creek Association of Emerald Policy Advocate of the Year. Care about the right balance of making sure we have affordability, we're protecting the environment, and we're meeting the needs of not just Southwest Austin, but the greater community as a whole.
It's very nice to be here. I appreciate you all taking the time out of your day to get to know each of us. Again, I'm Paige Ellis. I work in marketing and public involvement for an environmental firm that handles Endangered Species Act, Clean Water Act compliance, and the National Environmental Policy Act. So I have seen on the ground level how we can work together and encourage density where it is appropriate to relieve traffic congestion and sprawl in areas like Southwest Austin that are just completely over environmentally sensitive features. So I think we really need to be kind of the watershed protector champions of the city to make sure that we are protecting our water. And we do need to also look at some of the services that are provided through the city and making sure that Southwest Austin gets its fair share. A lot of people think of homelessness as a downtown issue, but the Greenbelt has people that go and they take shelter there at night because that's the safe spot for them. So there's a little more work that we need to get done in Southwest Austin, and thanks a lot.
So, like the others, thank you for having us here. I really appreciate having an affordable housing discussion. It's nice to be able to have that topic-specific discussion. I hope we actually can do a little bit more of it somehow. But I kind of want to end with the affordable housing note, because that was one of my first issues that I was working on at Austin City Hall. I mentioned the Affordable Housing Incentives Task Force. It's something that has always been really true to my heart, that we need to be emphasizing the needs of the people with the fewest resources among us and making sure that we have enough housing for everyone in our town. I also want to make sure that it's recognized that the Strategic Housing Blueprint recognizes that there's a gap at all levels of the spectrum, and that we have to have solutions that will address both the income restricted side but also the market side. And you know, we need to be leveraging our assets, such as the lost opportunity we had at the Grove. We could have bought that property for $20 million and created $20 million overnight for affordable housing resources. That would have been a great opportunity for us, and I'd like to see those opportunities pop up again. On the market side, I also want to say that you know, we do need to be improving our permitting process. I think that's an area we often have these conversations around entitlements, but there's a significant amount of improvement we can do there. I've worked on the attorney side. I know what it's like to track projects that just won't make it through the process. I also know what it's like to see us losing our staff at these permitting level departments. And losing that institutional knowledge, which creates some of those slowdowns. So we need to be investing in our staff too. And then with regard to, and it's something that's not been talked about much here, I helped increase the homestead exemption for seniors and persons with disabilities, and that's something that I'm committed to increasing as we move forward too, because I think it's really important that we're addressing the needs of the people who aren't fixed incomes, and their buying power is being reduced every single year that the cost of living is going up.
Thank you all.